Welcome to the American Experiment Podcast. I'm David Zimmer, the Public Safety Policy Fellow with Center of the American Experiment, and joining me today is Representative Paul Novotny of the Minnesota House, representing the Northwest Metro area, Elk River and surrounding areas.
Elk River, Nowthen, Otsego, and Oak Grove.
There you go. Well, perfect. Well, welcome, Representative Novotny. Doing a little research, I see that we have very similar backgrounds. We both served 33 years in local law enforcement with sheriff's offices in the metro area, you with Sherburne, me with Hennepin. So what led you, after 33 years in law enforcement, what led you to running for a House seat in the Minnesota legislature?
Well, thanks for having me here, Dave. Going back to the experience, I always thought it was amazing. We had so many people that we worked with together, but I never had a chance to run into you, so many of your partners at Hennepin County when I was in investigations that I worked with. It's just the different circles. We were close, but never overlapped. As I was coming to my 55th birthday and that standard retirement age for law enforcement, I had been advised that the then serving legislator Nick Zerwas was going to be stepping down midterm, and it was going to be a sudden election that we were going to have to find someone to run for. And they knew that I was scheduled to retire in May of 2020, and Nick had always been a really strong voice for public safety. So many of his family members are in law enforcement, still in law enforcement. And I just thought that Nick had been the voice for public safety and public safety workers. And after talking it over with my family and my wife, decided to take the jump. And it was weird for me. I'd always been trying to be anonymous, keep your name out of the paper, not do anything, keep your number out of the phone book, the whole shebang back in the day. And then I'm printing 4x8 signs and putting my address on them. So it was quite a change for me. I'm still kind of a sit in the back of the church kind of guy, but do what I can, and if need be, appear on podcast even though it's uncomfortable.
There you go. Well, we appreciate you being here. I would agree with you. I think it's kind of counterculture to most cops, the way they operate. The last thing they would ever think
You would
of.
understand this. When I was an investigator, I had you were always at the scenes of something where the press would be, and I had a collage on my back wall of pictures of me with my back to the press because he never wanted to have my face on the camera. So,
Well, thank you for representing us, and congratulations is in order. I understand that this summer you were honored by the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association as the Minnesota House Legislator of the Year. Tell us about that award and what that means to you.
Quite an honor, being a MPPOA member all my life and going to conventions. I didn't really understand the how emotional it would be and how impactful it would be. I'd never gone to the summer convention, and it was very inspiring. And at that same conference, then they recognized the police officers or the peace officer of the year, and the actual Deputy Shipman from Anoka County who was there telling his story, and the runners-up. I felt very humbled by what they had done, but still honored to be recognized in the same ceremony as they were.
Sure. Your boss in the House was quoted as saying, Lisa Demuth was quoted as saying, Representative Novotny has been an invaluable voice in support of law enforcement and has consistently championed bills to allow our police and peace officers to do their job with the resources and tools they desperately need. So congratulations on that recognition. So you currently serve on a few committees, the Ways and Means Committee, the Human Services Committee, but pertinent to our conversation, you serve on the Public Safety Committee, and you have the lead minority role in that committee. Is that right?
That's correct.
Can you explain, give our viewers kind of a legislative 101 summary of what it means to be either in the majority or the minority when it comes to committees?
Well, I just mentioned this to Senator Latz a couple weeks ago. He's in introducing me to his wife. That I was on the Public Safety Committee. As the minority lead, you're the 9th or 10th most powerful person on the committee because, obviously the committees are stacked in favor of the majority. I think we have 6 members and they have 9 or 10, so that they will always be able to have enough votes to pass whatever they want. If they don't have enough members that are attending a committee, maybe they're at a different meeting or whatever it is, then they just won't have a vote. So that being said, you still have the chance to, speak to different bills and try to shape them. I describe it as like being on a sailboat. You can't turn it, but maybe you can guide it a little different and get it in a direction that makes sense.
Okay. So describe the 2-year biennium process. As I understand it, 1 year is supposed to be more funding and bonding, and another year is supposed to be more policy. Is that the way you've experienced it?
Well, traditionally, the first year of the biennium is the budget year, and that's why that one will begin right away in January. And that's when the main budget is done. The bonding is supposed to be in the second year.
Okay.
But we have, under the DFL lead, insatiable desire to spend money. So we've done budget bills and bonding bills in both ever since I've been there.
Right. And really policy, a great deal of policy in that first year in 23, especially related to public safety and such. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, there was a lot of policy. There was a lot of policy that we didn't agree with and did not support the omnibus bills in 23. There were 2 public safety omnibus bills in the 24 session. The first one was just on policy, and there were many things that we agreed on that, and that was 134 yes votes on that, a recommended yes vote. There were a couple of policies in the second bill that came through that we didn't agree with. Some of the things like telling a peace officer exactly what they can or can't say on a traffic stop, equipment violations and things like that, verbiage that I just thought were micromanaging and
at a legislative
level, yes. That's easily addressed by a policy from a different department level things. And I initially was against, that. I recommended a yes vote and was going to cast a no vote just in protest. But after hearing some of the other bills that were there, Representative Nash had a bill that I thought was extremely impactful, and I didn't want my vote to be construed as being against that and not standing up for victims of assault. So did recommend a yes vote on both bills.
Okay. So a lot is at stake with the election coming up in terms of what the leadership or the majority will look like next year. So for public safety, depending on how the election goes, can you kind of give us 2 paths or 2 ideas of what the public safety priorities might look like next year, depending on if you're in the majority or the minority?
Depending on, yeah. Well, if we get the majority, obviously I hope to get the gavel so we can do some good work and try to roll back some things. Common sense things that I think are simple to think about. We've got the MRRA coming up that didn't include anything like crimes of violence. So we're going to have someone that's maybe already been sentenced, and they're going to serve half their term. Other things we don't like about MRRA is that there's no penalty for misbehavior or violating the conditions or committing another crime. Once you get the credit, no matter what you do, it can't be taken away from you. Okay. which is
The
unbelievable.
MRRA, that's an acronym for putting you on the spot?
It's cutting. It basically takes the sentencing in custody from 2/3 to half.
To half, right.
And like I said, Minnesota is already one of the lowest incarceration rate states in the nation.
Yeah.
We used to have more of a focus on probation, but in the last in the 23 legislatures, and one of the things we disagreed with was changing that probation to put caps on it. So even if you had agreed to take a long probation against a short penalty 10 years ago, and you said, well, give me a low incarceration, I'll take a long probation to keep me on the straight and narrow.
Right.
No matter what the circumstances was, we automatically capped that. And some of it were for egregious crimes, and we just think that crimes of violence and things should be included under the old statutes. And you shouldn't serve half your term.
Right, right. If I understand it correctly, back in the day, historically, that 2/3 time served was, they used to call it good time. So you got good time for every day you were good in prison, you got a third of that day off,
Yes.
right? So if you minded your P's and Q's, got a prison job, didn't get in fights, all of that, you were rewarded by getting out, getting a third of your sentence cut off in custody. That kind of got wiped away over the years, or whitewashed, where it was just
An automatic.
All you had to do is be alive and you get your 1/3 off. And now they've actually reduced that to 50%, is what I understand.
Yes.
Is that correct?
And if you get a credit, you can get that credit just by attending a class or doing a training. You don't even have to pass.
Right.
You just have to be there. And these things are just, and you put that in conjunction with Minnesota being a concurrent state as opposed to a consecutive state. So even if you get in trouble now, you'll serve that concurrent with your current sentence. So if you assault a guard at the prison or you do something, there's no real penalty for you.
Yeah, you'll get another conviction, but in the end, you're serving the same amount of
You'll
time.
get another point, but it won't make any difference to you, right?
Right, right. So I took a look at some of the bills that you authored last year, and maybe just for sake of time, we'll just focus on one or two of these. But there's been an explosion, we all know, an explosion of auto theft and carjacking in our state. And again, talking about historically or back in the day, if someone was pulled over, they would normally pull to the side of the road, and once the officers were on them, they would somewhat cooperate. Now you have 14 and 15-year-olds in stolen vehicles that when the police get behind them, they're actually ramming squad cars, and complete disregard for authority.
With guns.
With guns. And so I see that one of the bills that you authored last year was, I'll just read it, crime of fleeing police officer in a motor vehicle modified to add heightened penalty for fleeing in culpably negligent manner. Can you describe what you were trying to get at there, and then where did that go?
We want felony points awarded for felony dangerous behavior. I like to use just to put it in a proper perspective where we're at with fleeing and chases right now. You imagine someone standing in the middle of Main Street, small town, whatever it is, and that person is randomly shooting into the air. And the cops show up and say, hey, quit shooting into the air. Now, the person has a choice between quit shooting into the air or, in this situation, they're going to start shooting into windows.
Yeah.
At that point, with the current policies that we have, they're encouraging the cops to say, oh my God, he's shooting in the windows. This is dangerous. We're going to back off. I feel the current chase policies or pursuit policies that we have are encouraging that reckless behavior. Okay. And we have to give them consequences for engaging in that reckless behavior. And we need to engage them. It should be the the peace officers in this state that are taking care of this business. We shouldn't be counting on a curve in the road to end a chase. If I was king, there'd be a no chase policy, and that, I mean, we're not just going to let people run. This would be terminated as quick as we can at the behest of the police when they are ready to do it.
Okay. So did that bill that you authored progress at all?
No.
In the DFL-led legislature?
No.
Okay. Another one related to that, related to auto theft, is the expanded use of tracking devices for fleeing motor vehicles. What were you trying to get at there, and was there some success with that bill?
I will say, and this is one of the bills that we worked on that we agreed to, that was a good idea. It started off, Ramsey County had the program where they're using the puck or the sticky bomb, for lack of a better term, that they can shoot at a car that is stolen, and then that tracker is used so they don't have to have an active
So it's a GPS tracker.
A GPS
that
tracker
gets
gets put on the
car.
cars.
Yep.
Part of the agreement and legislation that was passed is that that if the car's stolen, that they can just put that on without having specific written permission from the owners of the vehicle. The fact that they're reporting it stolen is enough for them to place it
So
on.
there was a prohibition against police
Well,
putting
here's something.
a
I didn't
tracker.
agree with it to start with. Court-wise, if it's a stolen car, it's evidence. We
Right.
don't need a search warrant to seize evidence.
Right.
If it's fleeing, that car is evidence. That car is also subject to forfeiture.
Right.
We don't need a search warrant to forfeit a car. By coming up with the language that we did, specifically exempted fleeing cars, not, limiting it to just stolen cars, not a car that is fleeing, that created, case law in that. And I disagree with it. I thought we were better off before we had the law about being able to place it on stolen cars because, as I said, it's subject to forfeiture.
Right.
Why do we need a separate law? But I'd like to add that as a provision of the tracker bill. That's one of the ways that we can end or not be in the pursuit to start with.
Right.
We just saw last week State Patrol was following with a helicopter. A motorcycle fled. That no motorcycle had no idea that they were being watched. That way, we're not putting.
They're not going 100.
They're not going 100
miles an hour.
Yes, they're not going crazy trying to catch them to stop them. So that's one of the ways that we can, had you been able to put a tracker on that motorcycle and let it go, that's a good outcome.
Okay. Another bill, it wasn't your bill, but this came from the DFL side, and thankfully it didn't get much traction last session. But it had to do with lessening the penalties for being a felon in possession. Do you recall that bill at all? It was offered in February or March, and I forget exactly who offered it, but
I do not remember who offered the bill. I know that it was offered, and this was the same time that we were dealing with the Burnsville tragedy and straw purchase issues, and then we had someone that's not reading the room offering this.
Okay.
They keep telling us, and this is the same time they're increasing or having bills to increase the penalties on lawful, responsible gun owners. The people that are irresponsibly and criminally using firearms, we wanted to change the.
Yeah, we wanted to reduce the penalties for someone in that case. Well, thankfully,
When all intents and purposes, Dave, at least in a couple of counties in this state, no one's being held accountable anyway.
that's true. That is true. So, as we wrap up today, any parting thoughts on this coming session and what you would hope to be able to sit here and say next year at this time?
I hope that a year from now I can sit down and say that as the chair of public safety, we've moved the needle a little bit and we're trying to make it safer, to focus the criminal justice system on the victims and the prevention of further crime. There's things in the Department of Corrections I want to work on. I've talked on the floor several times about we need to start studying 5 years ago about what we're going to do with some of the prison facilities that we have. Stillwater and St. Cloud should have been bulldozed a long time ago. And I don't even know how long it would take to replace them, but we're spending an ungodly amount of money on maintaining them, which is not working very well.
Yeah.
There's over 100-year-old buildings. They're falling apart, and we're putting lipstick on a pig when we could make big changes, build some new buildings that are much more efficient, require much less staffing. I think that in the long term, we could probably pay for these new buildings by the less staff that would be needed to safely run them. And we need to start looking at that now, because you got to think it's got to be a 5 to 7 year window to build a prison. So that's one of the things I want to start talking about.
Well, great. Well, we wish you all the best next year and in the coming session, and thanks for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me, Dave.
Well, thanks for watching, and we hope you join us next time on the American Experiment Podcast.